if you were at DebateCon, like there was a feeling that like shit could have got really heated and potentially violent based on what Andrew was saying, right, about Islam in that debate. One of the arguments that I pushed for, and I'm glad Andrew made in his debate with Hakikachu, was actually prior to Islam, like many of the countries that we look at now that we were criticizing in that debate, like Yemen or a lot of these Middle Eastern countries, right? They actually were in many ways the cradle of civilization, right? What happened? It's not that biologically these people were inferior. So how do you explain the low IQs now? Islam. That's how you explain it. I'm sorry. It's true. And the argument that Andrew made there, again, this is another thing. It's not convenient to say, right? Inbreeding's terrible in Islam. That doesn't mean everyone, that Hakikachu guy, full respect to him in this sense, he didn't sound like an overly dumb person. I think he's an intelligent man. I'm sure his IQ's on par, if not excessive to mine. But as an average, if we look at these countries where Islam is dominated, it's horrible. It's horrible how low IQ they are, and that's really a problem. It's not just a matter of like, oh, they're a point or two below what we would consider most European countries. It's devastatingly low to the point where it's hard to have civilizations operate and have things like infrastructure, sewage systems, roads. These things become difficult when your like average IQ for a nation is below these levels. And the fact that we're supposed to just be like, no. Anytime there's problems with anything in the world, it's the West's fault. That means it's Jewish people's fault. It's Christian people's fault. It's the United States' fault. Everywhere. Every population. I saw someone, where was it the other day? On Bill Maher's show. They brought in that Killer Mike guy that's a rapper. They brought up Haiti. What do you think he said the problem with Haiti is? France. France is continuing to exploit Haiti. It's not the Haitian people. They've never done anything wrong. These poor bastards have just been constantly victimized by the West and France, and it's insulting. At some point, not only is it insulting, it actually is bigotry from the opposite angle, because what you've done is you've taken away personal agency. Well, they can't help themselves.
It's the bigotry, soft bigotry of low expectations, and the other thing. I just want to have this real quick. Are you familiar with Howie Carr at all?
It sounds familiar, but I don't think so.
Well, he has this quote, and I'm going to steal it from him. So, Daniel Kikachu, you can tell two things. He is definitely dawa for sure, and he's a Harvard.
Explain what dawa means to the people that don't know.
So, dawa is Muslims. It's the greater Muslim nations, basically. So that's what it means. So and that it's their way of apologetics. It's Muslim. So like Pikachu is a Muslim apologetics, debater. That's what he does for a living. And you can always tell a Harvard man. You just can't tell him much, and that's certainly the case. He's a dawa, and he went to Harvard, so both on both counts. But the other thing that it's crazy to think that these folks hate. He was heated when you said you were putting on Christmas lights. He was heated. I know that there's a lot of people, and I haven't seen it lately in your chat, but I've seen it, and I've seen it throughout the place. I never met a Jewish person who gave a shit about Christmas lights. Yep. I grew up with my parents going to see, there's like some, in a town next door, they're famous for, this street is famous for their Christmas lights. Just because we don't celebrate Christmas doesn't mean we don't appreciate Christmas. So there's levels of who your enemy actually is. One is trying to assimilate, but also wants their homeland. And one wants to control the entire world and is allying with communists in order to destroy the West.
Well, this is what I've said. Now listen, right? Like I'm not trying to get into a broader conversation about the history of Israel-Palestine.
No,
I
I'm
will say
not.
that.
I'm just
Oh,
saying
right. Just saying for my audience, right? I will say this though: the mistake that people have made is when they see and they have certain criticisms of Israel. Let's say that to them those criticisms are real. Okay, fair enough. The mistake is these people, the most virulent people, particularly on the left that are anti-Israel, want you to die. They're the people celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk. That's who they are. If you drew a Venn diagram of the people at these Ivy League colleges that are these radical left wingers that are like, from the river to the sea, if you took a Venn diagram of them and the ones that celebrated the murder of Charlie Kirk and wanted to keep vigils off of campus, it's a fucking circle. And so that's fine. If you want to be like, we don't want to fund Israel, we have criticisms, no problem. But I hope that I could convince you of this at least. These people are not your friends on the left. These Islamic people that are like that dude that called in, assuming he's Islamic, and certainly a lot others that I've met, they don't fucking like you. And they're not secretive. They hate you.
Ben Shapiro is closer aligned with our politics. Now, I have some issues with Ben Shapiro when it comes to, we don't have the same conservative mindset for sure. I will say that. But he's closer along the lines of us than Cenk Uygur.
Yeah. It's funny. I find myself in a position too where it's like I'll be like, we need to stop funding Israel, and people be like, anti-Semite, right? I get that, and then people will be like I go on Tim Pool's show, and this dude's spurging out about Israel, and I'm like, hey man, can we talk about like domestic politics or here? And David Ick says that I'm Tim Pool's Jewish friend. It's like you can't win either way. All I'm trying to say is this, right? Yeah, you can hate both. You can hate Instagram pals. I don't give a shit. You can hate whoever you want. I'm merely here to tell you this. And anyone who wants to challenge me to this, I'd be willing to have this debate. The average Jewish person, like particularly conservative Jewish person, but I think you could say average anyways, in the United States would be absolutely tolerable to live next to, even if their population increases. I cannot say the same about Islam. I can't. And I don't know how more blatant I can put it than that.
Just look at Lewiston, Maine. There are places in Lewiston, Maine, there are actual no-go zones, meaning if you look like us, you can't go or you're going to get liable to be shot.
I'll tell you this.
Police don't even go there.
If you were at DebateCon, like there was a feeling that like shit could have got really heated and potentially violent based on what Andrew was saying, right, about Islam in that debate. Had he been debating a Jewish person, would anyone have batted an eye? Like, well, shit might get violent here. I don't think so. Now, maybe they would have said, Andrew's going to get debanked or some shit like that. But, I mean, there is a difference.
Would have heard a lot of oy veys, maybe.
Right. And I'm not here to convince, listen, I'm not here to convince anyone that's like, I have problems with Israel. That's not the point of what I'm saying here. And I don't even think it's the point of what you're saying here. The point is, like, there is a repeated pattern. People wanted to like go through these crazy histories of like Jewish people and like, oh, let's look here, there. Like, it is blatant. You don't even have to be a historian. There is a pattern. Every time that you see Islam get to about 20% into a country, things radically change. Radically. And all of a sudden they start dominating culturally, politically. And when they do, they don't give a shit about you. They hate you. They hate you if you're not of their religion. It's not just, well, let's go ahead and do your thing. That's not how they treat things. And listen, I want to be clear here. I've known, at least in my life, 2 Muslims that are amongst the nicest people I've ever met. Sure. That I would trust them, that great dudes. But we're talking about the average and what happens when people come in on average. And I just think that, that the evidence is overwhelming to see. Again, any criticisms that people have with Israel, fine. I think that, one of the things, I hate to fucking even broach this subject about Nick Fuentes, but I saw him complaining about Tucker Carlson the other day, calling him an anti-Semite. Take that for what you will. But one of the things he said, yes.
It's like the pot calling the kettle black on that one.
He's like, I don't dislike Jewish people. I hate Zionism. And he's like, yes, maybe true. But what I think's funny is, if you believe him or not, at least he has the wherewithal to say that. And when I have these people that call in that are like, Rachel Wilson needs to be kicked out of this country because she may be 1/16 Jewish. It's like that hatred, like hatred of that level, I will never understand. It's like that is so fucking batshit crazy, irrational. I don't even know how you could possibly justify it. Like Rachel, Orthodox Christian, right? Wrote this book that they're all like, oh yeah, we love this book. Unfortunately, though,
Her
her
and her
blood is
husband are fighting, you know, these lefties on a daily basis to save our freedoms. And
the idea.
someone wants to kick.
Yes,
That's
but if
so
we did a
stupid.
blood test, and I'm here to tell you right now, I don't fucking know my ethnic. I kind of know that my dad was majoritarily Italian. I know that my mom had a little bit of Irish in her. I think she's red hair. But I don't know. I've never done a blood test. I've never sought to really look into it. It's not beyond the pale that there's some Jewish blood in me. I guess I'm deported too then? I don't fucking know or care. How irrational do you have to be to take things to that level? To that level that it's like, well, even if you're mistakenly Jew, and then the person that was saying that was telling me they were half black, and they maybe should be deported as well. It's like, oh, sweet God! Like
If they wanted to deport themselves,
maybe they couldn't decide. Yes, that's how irrational it was. And you're just like I'll never get this level of like sort of look, I'm all for standing up for your own ethnicity and shit like that. But to where you're getting to the point where it's like we should blood test people, and if they are 1/16th someone of another race, get them the fuck out. It's like there's no rational conversation possible at this point. That's just insanity. No, you could say, I personally choose to only, date someone that's pure blooded at the end. I think it's wacko, but sure, whatever. Sure. But to kick people out of the country, it's just fucking.
I have no issue with that at all. You want to date whoever you want to date.
Sure.
You have your preferences. It is what it is. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's plenty of Jews that fought for this country. In fact, one of the oldest synagogues in the United States was built, I think, in the late 1600s, and they funded a majority of the Continental Congress themselves. So yeah. I mean, this country wouldn't exist if it wasn't for those shekels. And there's plenty of people of all ethnicities that fought and died for this country. The issue of ethnicities is not the problem. It's the fact that right now what we're seeing, and it's all sorts. I mean, if you look at when my mom came over from the Soviet Union, okay, when she got here, she thought of herself as American, not Russian. She thought of herself as American. My family thought of themselves as American. But when you see, I live, very close to a big Russian community. The Russians that are coming here now think of themselves as Russian. There's the distinction there. Yeah, and it's the same thing for everyone else that's coming. And it's because we lost the fact that people were coming here for not the promise of the freebies. They came here with risk to have a better life, maybe not for them, but for their future ancestors, for their children and grandchildren. And that's what we're losing.
We find ourselves in a position where, as someone who is white, I understand that there's a war against whiteness, right? There's a war against,
absolutely.
Listen, look, here's the thing, right? There have been people that are Jewish, like in the ADL, that have participated in that. And then there are Jewish people that find themselves on the victim of there's a war against Jewish people, right? Like, it's the same true of white people, right? Yeah. How many people that are white that are like, and this is one of the arguments I made to sort of the white nationalists. It's like, I understand the argument, looking at in general, the average, and that's sort of the argument I was making in Islam, right? But it's like, why if I had to choose a neighborhood, I had to choose a neighbor, and I could choose a black gentleman who, let's even say, is an atheist, a black atheist who has shown himself to be along the lines of what I consider to be a well-behaved member of society, agrees with me, is conservative, etc., or a white person who claims to be Christian, who's a super, Harvard, Ivy League dude, super trans, this and that. Why would I prefer to live with the in a neighborhood with the second guy as opposed to the first, just because of their skin color? Or because, for me, it's like, I understand there's a reason that stereotypes exist, and that's not all bad. The problem is
Sure.
if you take the stereotype and you refuse to let go of it in knowledge of more specific evidence. And the example I always use is, our friend Manted, very tall dude, right, that was there. If I'm like, me and you are picking up a basketball team at DebateCon, right, and I get to pick first, I'm picking Manted, right, because he's really tall, right? Tall guys, good at basketball.
You're not picking me?
No, well, you're on the other team. You're the other captain.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So I would be like, I assume tall people are good at basketball. But if I pick him and he's dog shit, the next day when we're picking teams and I pick first, I'm not going to pick him. And someone might go, but Rob, don't you understand? Tall people are good at basketball. I could say, yes, in general. But the specific knowledge I have of this tall guy is he sucks. He sucks at basketball. So that specific knowledge outweighs the stereotype. This is sort of the criticism I've had with like the idea of white nationalism. Do I think that you should have the right to live in a community of like-minded people? Of course. But can the government legally enforce that certain people based on their ethnicity not be allowed into an area? No, that's too far. And it's also a pipe dream. It'll never happen, at least not as the United States is currently formulated. So it's not even worth.
I'm still okay with that. If you want to live amongst just white people, fine.
Yeah, I don't give a shit. Same with black, same with Jewish, same Hispanic. I don't give a fuck.
Don't care. I fully support the neo-Yazis saying whatever they want to say. I fully support it, because if they lose their rights to say it, I lose my rights.
Right.
That's all what the freedom of speech is all about, is that.